Okay, let's get started. Call to order the regular board meeting for Thursday, November 19th. Okay, first item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. So let's have a look, and if there's any requests for changes, please speak up. John, you were suggesting something earlier. Is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I have two comments out of the October 22nd minutes.
Okay, let's cover that with minutes. Is there anything else from anybody? So, motion to accept approve the minutes?
Motion made.
I'll second that. All in favor? Okay, approval of minutes, and we have to do this in two sections. There's an in-camera component. If we need any discussion, we'll have to reserve that for in-camera at the end. If they're acceptable as is, we can approve it without going in camera. Okay, so you had comments?
I have two comments. Is it normal that we include defeated motions in the minutes?
I believe so. As a record of that it was discussed and not carried. I would think yes, that we would include a not carried motion.
Normally you don't. Normally.
How does the public or anybody reading the document know what was discussed if it's not?
The minutes are a record of motions passed, not all motions. You know what? No big deal. I'm curious about that. But do you want my two comments?
Yes.
Okay. So a little bit of a speech first. You know, I wonder as a board member, and this is not to make anybody feel uncomfortable, please. I'm here to try and do a job as best as I see fit in doing it. And I wonder sometimes if we had a doctor here, whether or not we'd be asking them COVID questions. If we had an engineer, if we'd be asking them engineering questions. I've got a little bit of experience in local government, and I see things that I would really like to get my hands on, but as a board member, a lot of it's day to day, I get that, but some of it is not, and I'll get to that in a second. I know the datum recommendation was defeated. It didn't stop me from asking a friend, what do you think? And there are people in the Comox Valley that are fully versed in the datum that would end up costing us a lot less getting.
Can I stop here for a second? We've debated this. If there's comments or corrections to the minutes, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
I don't believe we should be going back over things we've already decided.
So let me
if we need to
back
add an item to the agenda and discuss it.
Let me go back and say this, that usually there's an item called business arising out of the minutes. And this is what I would think would be a business arising out of the minutes. It gives board members a chance to talk about an item that was on the minutes. It's not to rediscuss the issue, should not be. It's a comment about, I'm not advocating that we go and do this. I fully understand that the board has made a decision to put it off to January, and I support that. I get that. What I'm saying is, as a matter of process, there's other ways of doing this when we talk about it in January. There's other ways than spending a lot of money on an American corporation that, frankly, is not what it used to be, and they charge a lot of money for something that I think we would have done a lot more cheaply. That's my comment on that one. Now, if you want to revisit that in January, I'm okay with that. And this is not a comment about you or your anything like that. It's just about where does our responsibility lie in terms of finding the best deal for the taxpayer?
In my mind, this is a legitimate agenda item for a meeting properly raised. I don't think it is legitimate that we debate this in approving minutes.
Absolutely. But do you want to do the minutes and then business arising out of minutes? I'm not even sure we have that such an agenda.
We don't, and I would suggest that we then say our process would be added to the CAL meeting in January, or in December, sorry, next meeting. I don't know, what does everybody else think? That's my thoughts. Do you have a thought on this?
I just want to clarify, you're talking about the Motion,
Number 4 on the
Number
minutes.
7.
May I go a little farther than that? I'm talking about the idea of.
Yes, I understand that. And what I'm trying to say is it is a legitimate discussion item. Our agenda has been formed already, and what you're saying is I want to add items to the agenda. And I'm suggesting that perhaps this one could be added to the next cycle.
And I'm absolutely okay with that. I'm okay. I just wanted to raise the issue here that to get board members to think about what our role is. And I'm okay dealing with this when it comes up next time, but I'm more concerned about the second issue I want to raise.
Okay.
And that is item number 7. The terms of reference is a policy thing. And you've asked staff to bring that back in January. I know staff is overloaded, and since it's a policy thing, I'm wondering if the board consider, one of us, I'm volunteering, to go out and look at policies that are in other jurisdictions and bring that back to the board, and that takes one thing off your plate.
I can speak to this item. Gary Mason has already prepared the terms of reference that will come on the agenda for our December 1st Cal meeting.
I'm happy with that. That's good.
Hey,
I guess you go back and look at it and say, well, is this a type of item in future that board members can get involved with? I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe we can discuss that in the terms of reference going forward.
Okay. Any corrections, any changes, or do we approve these minutes as is? Okay. Motion to approve the minutes as is.
I'll make that
Second. All in favor? Okay. Do the paperwork part to make sure this gets the gas published.
So, sorry, did we add John's concern to the agenda then?
I think we said we would post it
On
on the next cycle in December.
Okay.
Okay, so next item on the agenda, oh, sorry, there is in-camera minutes. So if there's any discussion of these in-camera minutes, we should defer. But if we can read them and say we're going to approve them. And as I look at minutes, I say, is this an accurate record of what happened in that meeting? Is any discussion of these required? Motion to approve the in-camera minutes.
I'll make that.
All in favor? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is reports, starting with the administrator's report.
Do you want me to read it or?
It's going to get put as part of the record, right? I would prefer that you just read the key points as you go through it and say the word.
Okay, the conversion referendum mail outs. We did mail out over 700, and we know they've gotten to people's homes because we've had a bunch returned for incorrect mailing addresses.
I'll get that.
You got yours today, right? Now, just so you know, Urban Systems did not charge anything for pulling that together. They had originally quoted us $500, but it was a fairly simple pull together, so they charged us nothing. So that was awesome. The collections, we sent out 202 statements, and we sent them to everybody, even if they were just, 1 year late, like they should have paid by March of this year. 28 statements. People got letters explaining they have till Tuesday, November 17th to make suitable arrangements. We have not taken the next steps yet because of the budget. I was preparing the budget. So we're going to have to look at doing that after we get the water bills out. There's not many, but there are a few who haven't paid. And it's interesting because a lot of people got their statements And then they phoned to say, I never got the bill, which is interesting because clearly we have the correct mailing address, so. Water bills, again, they're going to be going out next week, so, so they're late. So I'm actually going to change the due date of when they can pay by, because you don't want people getting a bill saying paid yesterday. They get upset, so. The referendum, it's going really well, even with the power failure. People kept coming in the dark to vote, and it was pretty impressive, and I think it's going well. We are having a lot of questions about mail-in ballots, which we don't accept.
My
Yeah.
understanding is that that was referred to our chief election officer, and he recommended against mail-in ballots.
Yeah, we didn't have time to put it in place. You know, and if one, if one, you know, if the organization is a going concern, it would definitely be worth looking at that at some point. Oh, budget, Graham's here. We'll talk about that in a bit.
So thank you.
Yeah. Or you can sit there, wherever you want to sit.
I'd sit there at this chocolate.
Yeah, and with these signed minutes, I can get a hold of the RDC to convert the construction loan. They just need to sign docs. And the development referrals, the engineers are in communication with each other, so that is moving along. So that's it. That's what I have to report.
Any questions for our acting administrator?
Couple questions. I think the easy one first. May I ask you? Okay. On the development referrals, have the people that sent out the referrals given us an extension?
They know we're late, and we have communicated with them, so.
Okay.
So, but they are actively in conversation with the engineer because the engineer needed more information.
See, my question is kind of like, are they proceeding with the process of the regional district? Or are they waiting for us? That's more the question.
Sorry?
Are the referral agencies holding their process in abeyance until we receive our comments? If you don't have an answer, that's fine, but I would like to know that that's
I believe
happening.
so. They know that we're pulling together a referral.
It would be nice to get something in writing to them.
No, I can't hear you because of the
Oh, you can't hear me.
stop.
It's like being in the dark on the boat.
Yeah.
Let's wait till the stop stops. This is pretty good.
Go.
It would be nice to get something in writing from them if they're waiting to make a decision for our stuff, for our referral comments. I guess the point is, what's the point of doing it if you're not going to wait for our comments? Why would we spend money?
Okay, because I've spoken to them,
Yeah.
and they
I'm
understand it's coming.
I'm a bureaucrat, and a bureaucrat says, I want it in writing. It's okay that they say, yeah, but I want to know that they're actually waiting and have it in writing that they're waiting. That's my recommendation.
Okay.
The second,
noted.
yeah, the second item I've got is, actually, can I ask a question just about, aren't staff usually at this meeting? Am I missing something?
We have water leaks and things
Sorry,
like
yeah,
that.
fire department cannot make it, Danny cannot make it, they're flushing, and it's got
Okay,
a
so
ton
that's
of
fine,
leaks.
but usually they will be here, right?
Yeah, well, as long as they're not overwhelmed with work. And that would be another issue, is with the power outage, it's really thrown a wrench into the water treatment plant, how it's working.
Have you got it? I thought you had it. Sorry. Kind of.
Let's not go off track.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, so he's busy.
Yeah, okay. I think it's really important to hear, but I understand why you're not. Item number 5, the budget. Is it normal that we have somebody else do the budget? That's what I'm reading there.
We discussed this at the last meeting, that we needed to do a budget and that it would be okay, given everything else that was going on, that Janice would see how to do it.
Right. Sorry to be such a pain, but,
Can I add a comment to that? So yeah, it's just Janice, it's still Janice's budget.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not my budget.
Yeah,
It's-
we've been working together.
Well said.
and this is another of these things that I would love to help, but I know it's a line between board and, at the end of the day, we've got our resources, we've got a ton of experience in budgeting. I know one of the things I'm going to be asking the board to do, if the referendum doesn't pass, is to look at the information you get and how it's laid out. So just so you know, that may be coming down the line, but you've already heard me say that the meeting when we had the financials. I'm a stickler for having something consistently year in, year out, with comparative numbers. I think that helps inform us and about where we're getting. But I'll lay it out there, it's up to the board. I'm quite willing to put in time to help you with that.
And that is part of the budget process, is we are comparing the actuals to the GL line items. So that's what,
multi-year.
yep, as best we can,
Okay.
moving forward.
What's the cost of that item? What's the cost of item number 5?
Don't know.
It's an operational issue, right? It's not something that we need to be approving.
Well, sorry, I have to disagree. I mean, I agree that it's an operational item, but it's a budget item that we approve, and so I'd like to know what the cost is.
That isn't the way that the board is operating here, that we don't get involved in minor expenditures.
The board can approve my inquiry or not. I'm okay with that. But right now, we receive the finite details on the finances. What's the point of getting it unless we're going to ask questions?
They're not here. This is a
And I get
report,
that.
right?
I'm talking about the last time we got it.
John, I'm struggling with the level of detail, Brad.
Right. I get it.
So were you asking how much, as in how much the help for MMPs cost?
And, you know, I can speak to that. I am doing a 3-day-a-week job, and I'm now doing a 5-day-a-week job. So I'm basically doing an 8-day-a-week job. So we are having to have consultants help
Yes.
to try and meet timelines that I was unaware of.
You're not getting the argument out at all. I
Yeah.
just want to know what the cost is, that's all.
And we don't, it's based on time, so we
Right.
don't know.
But you have to have an idea of what the budget is.
And
You didn't give them carte blanche, is what I'm saying.
I wouldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's the budget? Simple question.
There isn't a budget item.
No.
This is out of budget. That's the
Okay.
nature of it.
We're way behind the saver. I went to the board and I said, look, I need money.
I insist we move on.
Okay.
This is way too, this is not worth the use of our time here.
Respectfully, Mr. Chair, you're going to get this inquiry along unless we have some way of dealing with it. I took it to my council as an item. I got them to approve exact costs. All I'm asking for is.
This is not say where you are not the administrator, you're on the board, right?
Okay, but I am a trustee.
You are a trustee, right?
Responsible.
But do you want to just, shall I turn over chairmanship to you?
No, I just want you to understand that there's certain of us that like to know what we're dealing with.
And there's certain of us that would rather operate at a higher level of detail.
Maybe there's some room in between.
Right?
We had a long
Would you
conversation
move?
about this. It was a simple number. That's all I asked for.
Do you have the number?
I do not have a number.
There we go.
Okay, that's the answer. Maybe we could get a number.
Once we're done, I'll have a number.
Well, that's not what I call
Okay.
financial control.
Discussion over on that. Let's move on. So, shall we move to adopt the acting administrator's report?
I will make a motion to adopt it.
Second.
All in favor?
I put them in the wrong order. Fire chief's report's next, sorry. It's a lot of the same. You know, and I sent it ahead of time, so hopefully you guys had a chance to read it.
One thing that I would have asked Chief Ham, if he was here, would be the status of the select committee and the RFP for the fire company research on that process.
he has actually prepared, he was waiting for the terms of reference. And
Okay.
I was going to provide from Gary. He has actually prepared a document for us to start collating the information. He has contacted everybody. We're ready to roll. He just is waiting.
Us being the committee.
Correct.
So the process is underway, data is being collected.
Correct.
And do you know if there's any timeline associated with the project and when a recommendation might come forward or when a bid might go up? Do you have any ideas of those things?
No, we haven't had the meeting yet. He was wanting to wait in terms of reference.
Question?
Yeah.
I'm on the first page. I'm sorry. What is Charlie to Echo cause and what's Charlie to Delta cause? That's okay if you don't have that. I imagine it means something. I just didn't know what it meant.
He could answer that.
Just curious.
Where
Down
is
here.
I'm looking at the first page.
I don't know what that means.
Oh,
I believe, because he was talking about fire and COVID. This is probably fire calls, this is a guess, fire calls and first aid calls that are emergency, like a heart issue or something.
Well, this
We'll
says,
Google it.
this says medical response calls continue to be restricted to Charlie Echo. Anyway, sorry, you put it in there? I'm curious. Well, you didn't, but he did.
He did.
Yeah. Another question, the mutual aid agreement with the 19 wing,
Yeah.
has that been to the board? Is it coming to the board?
I suspect that that's an old agreement, right?
Yeah.
It hasn't come to the board while I've been on board.
So is it coming to the board? Is that something that we get involved with?
Or has it already come to the board? We just weren't on the board when it came in. Right, this could be an old agreement. Mutual aid agreements do come to the board if they to be approved.
Well, it says,
what's the question, sir?
well, I'm just curious whether it comes to the board. I would assume that we, that someone would sign a mutual aid agreement.
Mutual aid agreement?
Oh, it's referred to as being finalized.
Right.
Last time I saw it, it was in draft.
Right, so the board, to enter into an agreement, the board has to approve.
Okay, thank you. And the other one is, the last one is, I was interested because we talked about the terms of reference, and here's a subcommittee that's already working. I'm curious about when I can get going on the public works one. Do I have to?
Terms, when we get our terms of reference.
Okay, but they're already meeting,
Their select committee is meeting, not their standing.
not their standing. Thank you for that clarification. Good report.
Okay, any other questions? Trustee Goudreau, I don't know what I'm supposed to say. Questions?
Are we on the next one?
We have to adopt this one. So, motion to adopt the
So moved.
second.
I'm sorry.
You do have a question?
I have a question.
Okay.
The department had some request for fire inspections, so our bylaws do not accommodate these types of inspections. What was that? What fire inspections?
Sorry, Beth.
What fire inspections? Who?
I don't know the answer to that question.
I will ask Ian.
Has had some requests for fire inspections. Yeah, I'd like to know what that means.
Yep.
And what bylaw would be required to accommodate it?
Okay.
So we can decide whether we want to have that or not. Good question.
Good question.
I remember back in the old days, they did do fire inspections for people. If they wanted them. But maybe they're busier now. Who knows?
Well, it might be something that we work with another jurisdiction to do. I know it takes specific training to be an inspection officer, but it's a good question. Just so I know.
We have a motion to adopt the report, second. All in favor? Okay, and last but not least,
Public Works.
the Public Works report. AKA the humid water report.
So, as I said previously, Danny would be here, except they're flushing, and they've gone a little long on the flushing because of the weather. And he did say though, as they're flushing, the water is clear, which he's just amazed since the plant's been on. It's wonderful. So he has run into some issues with the power outages and the plant. So they're working through those issues because this is the first year. So the alarms go off quite regularly, and then crisis goes down the list of who to call. I did get a call at 11:40, but I mute my phone at night. So yeah, so it goes down all the water treatment plant list and then to me, and Danny got right back to them. So yeah, it's just a matter of them fine-tuning the plant, which they're doing.
So the question that arises for me, and I think Trustee France was on this earlier, is do we have power protection? Like is there a uninterrupted power supply for the plant?
Huge generator.
All that
Huge,
stuff?
yeah. But as soon as there's a flicker, it triggers alarms. So, yeah, just so they know. But it's a very big generator. Like when you go up there and you look at the plant, it's the big thing right in front of the
I
building.
recognize it now that I asked the question. But I guess that flicker is indicative of unconditioned power coming into the plant.
Or a power change.
Right, which is what an uninterruptible power supply can do.
Yeah, and I know at our office, when the power goes out, our UPSs start beeping. It's the same idea.
Yeah. So just would be interesting to know if there's something there. Like, did it cause an issue? I guess the first question, or is it just set off alarms?
It set off alarms and it restored some factory resets on 152 circuits. It was an issue. They had to reset each one. So, but they're working through it. You know, it's part of learning how to use the plant. So, it's working great. Now, the water distribution, on the other hand, is another story.
Let me just finish off there.
Sorry.
It would be interesting to know from our superintendent if there are any recommendations as a result of this power failure, right? That say because of having to reset circuits and what that might mean. Is there anything that he would recommend that we do differently that provides a higher level of service and at what cost? And it might be that we'll just reset the circuits, that's fine, right? That might be the answer. Okay, sorry.
Growth needs to be eliminated. Do they mean plant growth? Do you mean plant growth?
Under the water treatment plant?
Under Langley Lake, sorry. Growth needs to be eliminated. Do they mean, plant growth?
Well, I do know that they weed eat and mow regularly, but I'm wondering if it's more in the lake.
Oh.
Yeah. I know he was talking about, there had been a few releases of peat, and they're wondering if it's a beaver. So they may have to get someone down there, because when it disturbs, it releases a large amount of peat. So if there is a beaver, they probably have to get someone to move him.
You're going to say something about water distribution?
He's dealing with a lot of big leaks. It's keeping them very, very busy with leaks. it's old, and it's just becoming very frequent now.
You mean leaks, the piping system that feeds the houses?
Yeah,
Is
and,
it mostly in one area?
well, it's always in Kilmarnock, but
Always.
this is actually coming down the cloud, which is the main one, and that's the oldest one. So,
I think this is a topic now that we're settling through things that in the new year becomes a capital expenditure planning type of thing. Right? So how do we start the process of replacing these pipes? What does it look like? Can we get an engineering plan or whatever to these look like? Okay. Any other questions on this report?
Another way of testing the hoses, just interim.
I think they have figured something out, that there was a component they ordered which would, what do they call the back surge, whatever it is, back to the top.
back close to the,
Yeah, so
And-
they
and this
bought
is-
a device. Okay, so motion to adopt the water report. I'll talk loud.
I will make a motion to adopt the water report.
Second. All in favor? Okay, that is the report, so we're on to new business. And the first order of business is the 2021 budget review, and welcome to Graham from MND who assisted in the preparation of our budget. So I will turn this over to Acting Administrator Swanson and others to take us through it and tell us where we're at. And maybe, actually, I'll do a little bit of preamble here. Is that,
sorry about the microprint.
as we began discussing this idea last meeting, Janice did some research, and we have found that we are actually past our deadline for submitting budgets to the provincial government in order to get fire and street lighting grants and budget, or allotments of grants assigned. So the ministry has granted us an extension until Wednesday of next week. So the budget, that's why Janice has been working furiously to get this budget prepared. We are on short runway here. So whatever it takes here for us to dig into this and make sure we're comfortable with this budget, if we don't approve it and don't get through the bylaw that's associated with it, then we're funded on last year's funds. Is that pretty much?
Yeah, I mean, the deadline was October 31st. Of course, I was unaware of that. I knew it was coming. So the accountant from the province has gotten a hold of me, and he said, your hard deadline is November 25th. I need the bylaw, the budget. He needs the bylaw signed and sealed. And he said, if you can't come up with a budget that's approved, then you base it on last year's budget.
And when did you find that out?
Yesterday, or the day before, the day before.
So this is an unfortunate consequence of our quick turnover in administration, that we didn't have appropriate experience in place that would know that. Gary Nason does not come from the improvement district world, and my sense is this is something that is more in that world than in the municipal world that Gary is familiar with. So we missed it. So here we are.
So, point of order. I don't see it on the agenda.
What's not on the agenda?
Budget.
It's right there, number 5A.
5A for me is water leak policy 61105.
Oh, then you're not looking at the agenda.
Did you print
the new agenda that Janice
Look at the
had?
packet they gave you.
Yes, I did print the.
Yeah, and it wasn't on there. It
This
was
got added.
All right.
And there's a budget package in that for you too, John.
So needless to say, I haven't looked at the budget.
Correct.
None
None
of us
of you
have.
have.
None of us have.
I have. That's good.
Yes. And I have my phone, it would just say, get a magnifying glass.
I know,
sorry.
I need that too.
And we talked about trying to put it on a big screen, but you need a projector, which we don't have.
Okay.
OMG.
You don't have a projector in the office?
I haven't seen, no,
Wow. An overhead thing? Oh,
no.
well, that's administrative for the main office.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's true.
Yeah, he wasn't in the office enough to make up with me.
So, where the heck is this? Okay, take us through this. I'm just,
Okay, I'm just wondering which is the most valuable document to look at.
I don't have it.
So, lead us through this then?
Yeah, it's a red thing, it's great.
So the process that we went through here, I'll just, you'll see.
Sorry, Graham, do you have
The
it?
truck and then,
I do, but I just can't remember if
I
I downloaded it or not.
Oh, I see. I don't
Okay, so
have it. Sorry.
run us through this.
So the process that Janice and I went through was I sort of put in 2019 actual results, and then Janice provided the up to September 30th results for the current year, so that's 3/4 of the year. We sort of projected that looks like for the whole year, and sort of then lined up last year's budget with this year's budget, and sort of walked through each expense line. Was the budget reasonable for last year, or was there changes needed? So all these documents, the back part of the documents sort of all roll forward into the front of it, so the individual sort of backup is at the back. So if you look at the very last page, street lighting, so you can see we are, last year, the budget for that, for the recognition for that was $37,000. And we're expecting expenses to be similar to that. Which is September 30th, is just under $26,000. So if we extrapolate that, it's about 34. There's a rate increase in there, so we left that 37 is what the budget for it was last year.
All right, what page you want?
The last page you get back.
Very last one.
Yeah, so remember from the back forward.
So I just have one question that is puzzling me in the document sense, right? Is that as I look at the column headings, I don't see one that says 2021 budget. Does that mean it's a different document or?
Should,
So 2020
look at
approved
page
budget.
2.
Is it on page 2? Okay. That's what I was looking for there. Okay.
So yeah, it's very small. So you can see this one sort of rolls all the individuals amounts up. So then for fire, because that's the one where we go for the bylaw.
I'm sorry, what page do you want to do?
So this will be the second to the last. So all these numbers roll up into the onto page 2. There's just a little more detail in these. So I think historically we have a bit of an issue in regards to how we budget and how actuals get recorded. Like a lot of costs are sort of common costs, you know, whether it's water or fire. And so with budgeting, we're trying to but breaking it out a little more between the two functions, where when we're actually getting the invoice, we're just charging it to one account, so there is a bit of discrepancy potentially in the actual GL recording versus budgeting. So it's the individual functions, you know, fire department, public works, and there's also men. It's not perfect, the GL capturing, but I think when you look at the consolidated budget, so then the total, which is again on page 2, is a total of of the individual ones. So if you look at, let's see, I can't read this, I don't have my glasses. Well, up on my screen. So which one is it right here? Let's see, which one is this? Yeah, so, okay, yeah, so ignore the first page. I didn't update the first page.
Take that right off the first page.
Yeah,
Just start off.
let's tear it up.
Because I just printed everything,
Oh, I
to
like
make sure
that.
we had it, so just to confuse everybody.
Yeah, so the second page, shows the breakdown of the different functions, and then compares it to the prior year. So I'll just quickly go through some of the highlights. So we'll start with the expenditures, because what we did, we looked at the expenditures first, to get what the expenditures should be, then we played, I played with the water rates, to get the budget to balance. So you can see expenditures, different categories. You can see on the sort of expenditures administration, there's 356,000 we have for budget there.
I don't think I'm on the right page. What page?
Page 2.
It's now the first page.
Did you rip off the first page?
Yes.
Okay, so now it's page 1.
Okay.
So on the far left-hand side, so this is the total budget.
2021 proposed budget.
Yeah. So the two columns are 21 proposed and 2020 actual, then the proposed budgets for the individual functions that make up the total. That's what this spreadsheet has.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said actuals. I don't see actuals here.
Not in this one, it's in the sheet after that.
Okay.
It's just not enough column. So you can see the change really is in the administrative side, we're sort of moving the loan principal, like they call it loan charges, payments and charges, it's just a separate line item, it's just loan payments, because we want to break it down. So that's based on the actual banking agreement that we have, right, that the board's about to sign off on, I think. So that's what that amount is there. Occupancy cost, that's gone up, and that's due to the rental of the trailer at the water treatment plant, so it's $1,500 a month, so that's what the big increase there is.
Sorry, the trailer is the office.
So we'll walk through here. Insurance, so water treatment plant is in place now, so it's going to increase your insurance premiums. Let's see here. Infotech. I think Infotech's always been under budgeted when we look at the actuals. I think that's kind of the big changes on the admin costs. Supplies, it's not really broken down too much in here, but the anticipation or the generous feels that the material costs for running the new water treatment plant are going to be higher than what they were the previous year. So we're even looking at current year stuff. It's not a full year, so we don't have a full year comparison yet. But we'll look at the actuals too. We'll look at the next page.
I'm sorry, I'm going to ask another question. In the second box, it says loan payments and charges. Maybe you already said this, but it says 0.
Oh, because I just moved it down to a separate line item. It's down a little further, a couple more lines down. It's $203,000.
I'm sorry, loan payments. That's right.
Yep, no problem. Yeah. So other expenses, so again, utilities the water treatment plant uses more utilities than when it wasn't there, obviously. So that's increased. Repairs and maintenance, I think it sort of ties into some of the discussions we had earlier about, our distribution system that we're finding that repairs are a little higher. So that we'll look at the actuals a little more on that one. Travel and training, that's kind of a timing thing with COVID-19. A lot of training has been canceled, so I would imagine that's probably going to be in place for a good half of next year anyways.
Why isn't hydrant maintenance empty?
Because that's just
It is-
for repairs and maintenance.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's something that historically has been in the budget, but the GL's always just been charged to repairs and maintenance, so we couldn't isolate it, so we didn't. So remuneration, so these remuneration amounts are based on the new collective agreements, or work in progress on those, so. The right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what those amounts are coming in at, so.
What was the assumption made with respect to administrator?
I budgeted for a 3-day-a-week administrator.
Full-time administrator?
No.
Sorry, in addition to, like, so your position as
My
chief financial officer?
position is 3 days and the administrator is 3 days.
Okay, so 3 office staff again for 3 days.
Correct.
Nobody works full time?
Well, I am.
But I mean, normally there's no.
The administrator would, but it's probably not necessary.
The fire department, am I reading that right? Fire department, 119 last year, down to 28 this year?
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to ask you. How come the remuneration of the fire department has gone down so much?
That was what was budgeted.
That is,
Well, then why is it being budgeted so
okay,
low?
so I think some of the wages are actually being picked up in administration up there, up the top, so that's just I need to move. Basically, the fire department is $100,000 of wages. So
where is that?
Yeah, so that's, I can fix that. Sorry, like this was like, we were doing this morning and we had to move fast, but the total remuneration is correct there. I'll just give you,
Where's the total remuneration for the fire department? Oh, you
Just
can
at the bottom
total
for everybody. So
yeah, so within the fire department, it's 100,000 is what we have for that. And for public works, it's 240 is the total remuneration and 143, I think, for, yeah, that's sort of the breakdown of different categories. That's how we've set the budget up.
So total remuneration for waterworks is, who does that include?
Danny, Sonia, Keith, Kate. This is
The 4.
For,
Yeah. And is the 240, that's a portion of it in there too?
Yeah. Well, no, the 240 is strictly that.
Strictly those guys?
Those guys, yeah.
just the 4 of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the on-call costs in there. as well.
Oh, and the call, which is like the 3rd or 5th person.
And so then, yeah, so fuel to serve, left things there. So I'm going to jump around, sorry to do that a little bit. So the next, actually we'll go to the next page. I don't want to look at the revenues yet, this one.
Sorry, just a comment.
Yep.
I'm really into comparing year to year and making sure everything's in the same place it was last year. So I'm having a little bit of trouble following it. But I do look at the bottom line and it says, I think it says 584 this year versus 568 last year, which is actually, considering that we've got a collective agreement in place, is quite remarkable. Did we lose a bin time? Like, did we reduce the amount of the bin time? For
Yeah,
real administration?
a full-time administrator.
But going forward, like...
I budgeted 3 days.
Okay, so what was it in 2020? Full-time?
Yeah.
And then next year is going to be 0.3. What were you? Sorry, 0.6.
0.6.
Yeah. What were you?
I was
then?
0.6 last year.
And the next year, you're 0.6 again?
Correct.
So there's a fairly heavy savings right there.
Yeah.
That's what the difference is. And that's something the board approved?
We have not discussed that as yet. This is coming up as the first time right now.
I don't understand why it's not a full-time administrator and a part-time deputy or whatever.
have a belief you can do the administrative position 3 days a week.
But then you need another one. No?
No, I'd be there 3 days a week, Lindsay would be there 3 days a week, and then an administrator would be there 3 days a week.
But why not just have one administrator 5 days a week? And a helper, like we always had before.
So there's, my understanding is, right, is that there's kind of two skill sets going on,
Yeah.
right? Is the governance and overall management leadership of the organization, and there's a financial skill set. Now, can you find that in one person? Perhaps you can,
We
right?
sure can. We've had it before.
Yeah, it is a different program, it's different than it was, I mean, it was done in Sage before, which is a considerably easier program, and there's much more people who can work in that, but that's not what we have now.
All right.
As to your point, I think it's important to get the right mix in there. I'm okay with the idea of staff determining or making a recommendation for what that mix is. I'm more concerned with the workload, that you have sufficient resources to do it without being run off your feet. Making sure that all the deadlines are being met and all the things that you have to do, you have sufficient resources to do it. And I'm unclear that you do. That's not a hit on you at all. I'm just saying, I'd love to read you a little comment I made. Is sometimes local government gets frugal in areas they shouldn't. Staffing is one area that we should be really careful about, that we're providing enough resources for you to do the right job.
You know, I think another thing is the administrative position is paid more than my position. So it strikes me as you wouldn't want to pay an administrator to do what I do at a higher rate.
And that's a good point. Yeah. There's a mix of work there.
So this is 6 days a week as opposed to 5 days a week, and what you suggested. Right? If you're saying a combined position, that would be 5 days a week, and what we're doing here is 6 days a week.
Yeah.
3 of which at a higher wage and 3 with
Yeah.
And I am doing that right now, and I can tell you it's not enough.
that's 6 days a week.
I am doing the 2 positions, and it's not enough time. So the 3 and 3, I think, could be enough time.
Which is 1 more day.
Yeah.
And that's mostly because the new computer system that issues all the water bills is so technically complex that you
Yeah.
need an extra person to do it. You need a person devoted to that to do it.
And I'm sorry, could I ask for clarification?
Yeah,
What was your
go for it, I'm still processing.
FTE count for this year? What was it? For administration, that's you and the administrator.
Was 1 point, well, you'd have to do it for partial years, right? So it was 1.6 for half of the year and 1 for half of the year. So 1.3.
What would we normally approve for that position?
In the past, it had been a full-time administrator and 2 administrative staff at 0.6.
0.6. So has that changed going forward?
Well, it's changed a lot, because in the past, like 6 years ago, it was a full-time administrator and 1 part-time employee.
And how you slice it, that's a different issue, but like going forward in this budget, have you got 1.6 FTEs to work with?
You've got 1.8. Because you've got 3 a week,
Yeah.
3.6.
Plus, they have all of the consultants that help them.
Well, no, you wouldn't need that because we have the
We're gonna use-
consultants because I'm the only one doing it.
That wouldn't change anyway.
But
We
you
always
have
need
your
consultants.
Don't you have another one? What's her name?
Lindsay, oh, she's full, like she's busy, so
A
she,
full-time.
Lindsay's
no, she's a point
transactional
free and
work,
she
right?
can't do any more of her time. So because I'm doing both the positions now, I feel that you could do it, an administrator position in 3 days. And I feel that with me doing the position I'm in for 3 days, I think it would be enough.
I worry a little bit about it. If things are status quo, and what by status quo I mean, we don't have any big projects on the way, and I'm thinking about this as a going concern, right?
Yes.
the referendum is unsuccessful and that we're fully staffed and running our organization into the future. There is going to be a lot of work to be done around public works infrastructure. It's going to be a big project, right? Now, how much of that is going to be on the administrator? My presumption is quite a bit. Because public works is busy. They're dealing with a lot of stuff, although public works will need to be involved in that planning as well. So, do we have a hole on that side as well that we would need to staff and have an increasing staff in order to have, a public works element as a part of this, or consultants who could support them, right? So that's what I'm a little bit worried about, is because staffing to 3 part-time, is that appropriate? Or do we say, we need to start at full-time administrator plus 2 part-times like we were last year in order to provide for that project time, that ability to do all of the planning and all of the contracting that would go around replacing pipe infrastructure over the next, I don't know how many years that's going to want for. How many years are we going to need to run that project?
Personally, I think that if we don't convert, we absolutely need a full-time administrator, period. A full-time administrator is, to me, non-negotiable. They need to know what's going on daily, and they need to be involved in everything. And also, I think the board would need to take, would take projects, just like these committees, once they get going. That's how, and that administrator needs to be present in all of those meetings. I don't know how 3 days a week would work at all.
So what I heard you saying before, though, was that you thought that plus 1 staff would be sufficient. Did I hear
Well, in the
you
old
correctly?
days, that's what happened. One administrator, we had Gloria worked 3 days, maybe not even. And of course, it's a lot more complicated now with that water treatment plant. So, but I mean, I just think an administrator actually runs the government here. And why would we only have him for 3 days?
I think this is maybe a January discussion, but I would certainly like to hear from you the 3 kind of columns: the administrative work, your work, and the assistant work. And I think that would give us a better understanding of what fits in each one of those columns, because I too see that you need someone at the administrative level that is a higher level, and having to deal with other organizations and contracts and dealing with the board. All that stuff to me is higher level, just like it is in any organization. The CEO always has to talk. But I also see is, why would you want that same person doing the accounting? That doesn't make sense to me, and having that portion of the work in a different column makes sense. However, until you see it, laid out, then it's hard to get a handle on it. So I'm really hearing what you're saying, and I'm also having a full-time administrator is part of that as well. And making sure that position is well paid so you capture it.
And I think the other issue is comparing it with other improvement districts as well. And I know Mill Bay, who has 1,200 connections and a number of developments ongoing, you do not have a full-time administrator. So at the time, I believe she was 4 days.
What do they have for staff?
How many other staff?
2.
Well, maybe things will calm down, and once you get the system underway and get the kinks out, maybe things will.
What is your position? The other position?
It was deputy.
And what does that position cover?
I have a job description because it's in the union. It's included in the
What
union.
is it?
I do the payroll, the bank recs, create the financial statements.
The administrator did all that.
Yeah, that's
So,
not
since
long now.
there's 2 rules required under the Act, right? One is to have, and roles as opposed to people, that you have an administrator and you have, sorry, a chief administrator and you have a chief financial role. We had chosen, well, up till now, to divide those 2 roles, that we had a chief administrative officer and a chief financial officer. So it was deputy administrator and chief financial officer.
Deputy administrative, I don't know.
Yeah.
You did.
But we divided those two roles.
Were you on the board when I had
No, but that is the requirement to have those two roles, and that they were divided. That's in the,
It's a requirement to have those roles, but they don't have to be.
they do not have to be divided.
Right. It's because, let me say, that we didn't have an administrator that was capable of doing the job before, in my opinion. Let me make that clear.
Let's keep personnel discussions
And
out of this.
looking at other models, using Mill Bay, because they are a larger improvement district, the administrator did no accounting at all. She did administrative work. She could go in and format the financial statements. That was it.
And in Mill Bay and other examples, when you say they have two other staff, are they full-time or are they .6s as well? Yeah, I'm nervous to say .6 for an administrator. But can we move on from this for now and just come back, circle back after we hear the rest of this?
Frankly, I'm okay pushing it back till January.
We can't, we have to deal
No,
with it.
I'm okay approving the budget. We know the resources are there, how we divide them up, is a different story.
Well, do we know, or are we going to say, no, we want a 1.0 as opposed to a .6 administrator? That adds, probably $40,000 to the cost, right? So,
Personally, I'm okay with 1.8 with the report coming back in January for how that's divided up, because I hear your concerns, and we may have to look at different ways of looking at it, but I don't have enough of the base information to make that decision. I hear what you're saying, and frankly, I support it, but I'd like to see the whole picture.
well, we're up, on wages, we've gone up, $16,000 on 570 or 568,000. So that's what, 3%? Now, some of that is because of one-time costs in 2020. So it's probably gone up a little bit. What's that?
32.
And so that, if we were to make it apples to apples, just, active payroll, how much are we increasing our wage? I would expect our wages to go up higher than inflation because of the complexity of the organization's gone up so much.
And also the water treatment plant, we have an extra
Yeah.
0.3 and on call, which is almost equivalent to an extra person.
But you're confident all of that's been taken into,
Yes.
the one-time costs and all
Yes.
that's factored in, and that there's enough of an increase in here to cover that
I
additional
think it's
request.
remarkably low, the increase.
Mhm. But there were one-time costs last year.
Yes.
The question I have is, and I'm sorry, I appreciate the presentation, but I crunch numbers and I haven't had a chance to do that. So I guess what I'm really getting to the crux of it is, does this budget require a change in rates?
Pardon?
Does this budget require a change in rates? Water rates?
Yeah, so I'm just going to
Yeah,
walk through the
Let's
expenses.
walk through it.
I want to walk through the expenses, make sure you guys feel comfortable with expenses, then we'll talk about the actual the rates.
So are we comfortable with wages right now? What rate your comfort on a scale of 1 to 10?
That last question is the most important question I have. I am not for a rate increase.
So we're not talking about rates right now, we're talking about
But I
wages.
can't approve this part.
Okay.
But we're not talking about it, we're talking about expenditures, they're real, like it's not about rates.
Dude, I am at a 4 because I can't believe that we're going through a budget and have to vote on it in the same meeting. So
I get it, but here's where we are, do we want to put it, like, we're here.
I know, I'm not comfortable with it.
Okay.
Nothing, no choice.
John, how comfortable are you with the wage number?
Well, I'm sorry, that's almost half the budget. I'll say it outright, I don't want a rate increase. I'm paying $1,000 a year for water. That's a big ouch in my mind. I don't want to see a rate cut. Great.
Well, our costs are going up, buddy. What is that number over here? $53,000, right?
Well, we all know it would.
Yeah.
With water treatment plant.
Yeah, so how much of that is attributable to increased costs from the water treatment plant?
So we can take a look at,
Third from the rear?
let's look at, okay, so last page is streetlights, then we got fire, and the next one's water. The public works or whatever, right?
Third from the back.
Third from the back.
So the answer is expenditures are up by $30,000,
Yeah.
or $29,000.
That includes manpower and all of the expenses with operating a water treatment plant, as opposed to that little glorification thing. That's not bad. But of course, does that include the budget for the collection and elimination of the sludge?
That is included, yeah.
So the one thing on this public works thing, you'll see, so for remuneration for public works, which is kind of, it's more admin, because that's strictly the front office, there's 143,700 is what we budgeted for those 1.8 FTE. But we've transferred half of that cost over to the fire department. I think historically, 50% of the main costs have been charged to the fire department, so that's how that, there's no actual GL accounts for that, but that's how we're doing that transfer over there. So I think that's how the budget was done in prior years.
So public works is 29,000, fire is 14,000, no, 17,000 increase. Street lighting is up by nothing, it's flat.
Yeah, so then the other one is, again, it's up a fair bit. Well, not a fair bit, it's up 6,000.
That makes sense. So, fire is up 17, public works is up 29, and admin is up 6. Public works, we understand, is a wage issue. We need more people because of the complexity of the plant. We need a little bit more in terms of materials because of chemicals. What percentage is that? What percentage is public works up in expenditures? Do you have that, Grant?
No, I can do that quickly. So you want to know what public works is as a total?
Well, no, just the percentage increase in costs.
Oh, percentage increase?
So, can I ask you a question?
You can.
On the second page, revenue, water tolls and maintenance, and that includes an increase of the water tolls?
Yes, so, okay, so we'll get into revenues right now. So if you look at the, so your first page, that's a good enough spot.
Oh, but you
Can I just
haven't
say on that
answered-
one question?
you haven't answered-
I'd really like to understand I just having a hard time reading.
It's 4% increase on the public works
4%?
increase.
So that's not crazy for the quality of.
For the, on the expenditures, yeah.
I'm sorry, for what, capital, parcel tax and water rates?
No, we're not talking about the expenditure, the amount that we're
It's
budgeting, saying we will
4%.
spend on public works. So it's up 4% given the quality of that water plant. I think that's pretty understandable.
So the big problem is with the water tolls. If you, the budget amount from last year. You see the budget amount from last year, so we'll look at.
Which page are we on?
So let's look at the first page.
Second page,
Well, look at, yeah.
isn't it the second page?
Yeah, the new first page.
Yeah, the new first page, yeah.
The new first page?
Because
So-
before the first page off.
Look at the annual budget for water tools. It was 562,000.
Sorry, which column?
Annual.
The 2020.
In 2020, that was what the budget amount was.
For
The
this.
562,000?
Yeah. We're anticipating that actual amount is going to be only 414,000. So the budget was overestimated by a substantial amount.
Do we understand why?
We tried to
Oh, I looked at it, and the budget was based on an average bi-monthly billing rate of $135 per user. And it is substantially less than that.
I'm sorry, where are you getting that number from?
Which number, Paul?
This is on the first page, John, this.
Top of column
Top of column two.
Yeah, 5, 6.
So you're saying it was only 414,000 actual?
That's what we're anticipating, yeah. Because that was up to September 30th, so you're not going to have any big excess usage for the last few months, so it may only be 410.
And I did comment about this a number of meetings ago when I was saying I'm having trouble tying the budgeted number into the actual. And I said, where did that number come from? And
Yeah, and so the math that was done to calculate that number was number of users times $135
Average number, 135, okay.
per billing period.
So, sorry, to be clear, the annual budget is 562. What are we actually going to bring in?
I'm thinking about 415.
which is historically correct.
Well, I'm sorry, why did we budget? Never mind.
Well, that's our question to
No one
John.
can answer that here, correct?
Correct.
So there's no trustees sitting here right now that were in
And,
the last
yeah,
budget.
and neither is the administrator.
But we could get more information from it.
Well, that's really kind of amazing.
Does this have something to do with the huge amount of bills that are paid? Not that much.
No, that's not.
That's
There's no
assuming,
benefit.
that's assuming everything gets collected and all that.
Yeah, no, that's just billing.
So, are you telling me that we're going from 440,000 to 613, and that's going to be the rate increase, which is roughly 30%?
We'll talk about it,
That's basically what the math works.
and we will talk about it.
But that was kind of the thing, okay, I've done budgets in the past. You always want to figure out your expenses because you control the rates a little better or whatever, right? Or what the rates need to be or whatever, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it was like, because Janice always has questioned where, I don't know where this Mason got the budgeted revenue from because it's different than what I'm collecting.
So how did the tolls, so that would have driven our tolls in 2020, right? But the tolls would have been associated directly with that. So if the tolls are too low, that means the consumption was overestimated. Is
The
that
base
right?
rate was overstated.
What's that?
The base rate was overstated.
I don't understand what that means.
The base rate on the budget was estimated at 135 every 2 months.
No, that wasn't the base rate, that was just average billing rate.
That was the average.
So the
So what's the average?
So I'm breaking it down past that, right? So the 135 had to have assumptions in it, right? So the assumptions have to be based on how much cost, or what's our volume, and what are our costs associated with it, plus what is our, capital improvement charge that we want to put on that, right? The amount that we want to put into reserve funds, right? So you've got to do that math to break it down. So how did you get to the 135 bucks, right? Because it's going to be, I'll just pick a number saying, okay, we're going to use 20 cubic meters a house, right? So that's
something under $7 a meter, right, a cubic meter that you're getting. And so how does that stack up? Like, you got to do all the math right down to the bottom for us to understand this. I don't think somebody just like $135 and it doesn't relate to consumption. Okay? Like,
I can't see it. Somebody included in the prior year to create the water budget.
But I don't understand the connection to rates then, right? So if it was 135, you had to have a consumption number in order to be able to. So what was last year's consumption number versus what's this year's consumption number? Like that's a relevant number here, right?
So I had Baden produce a report with our consumption number for 2019, and it's broken down into base and the different rates. And so we know what you got there, right?
Yeah, so in 2019, full 2019, 110,000 was what the total excess charge was. So that was above the base rate of 367.
That's 2019?
2019, yeah. And I don't think the rates have changed since 2019.
I didn't.
Oh, they changed last year.
Yeah, they did.
I don't understand what he's.
No, I think it was 90 then too.
No, last year was 75 in 2019.
Okay, because your report's saying it's 90.
It was 90 in 2020, and it was 75.
Yeah.
The report's got it as 90.
Bad.
What was the budget for 2019 for water course?
I think I actually have that one.
Don't have it here.
We have how many connections? 894?
No, 690.
Sorry, no, we have 690 properties.
Parcel.
We have 690 properties, we have more than that.
We have 690 utility people.
I can actually pick up 2019 budget, but I can put it actually on my computer here. Just one sec.
Okay, so I'm not sure where are we here? What are we doing?
I'm trying to figure out the relationship. Like, how do we get that number? Like, consumption is a key number here.
How did they get what number in?
The budget for
The
2020.
2021 water tolls and metering budget?
No, the 2020 budget.
Or the 2020 budget?
So we have a budgeting error last year, is really what we got.
And I would say the budgeting error actually goes back to 2019. If I'm looking at 2019's financial statements, water toll revenue was supposed to be 455,000 as a budget amount. Actual was 390. And so then that error got rolled over into the 2020 budget.
So we're budgeting for too much consumption.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm more concerned how you got this year's budget, which is what we have to approve. Can we go on how you figured out that?
The
Revenue.
revenue?
2021 revenue, how did you
That
go about
was-
arriving at that
Yeah.
figure?
Yeah, so the way that we got to that number was, let's go back here. So we made the assumption to increase the excess rates by 30%, and that would come up to 150 of total excess. And then the bi-monthly thing to make it balance, you need to go to 112.
I don't think I understood that. I
The base rate, to balance the books, it's $112 per,
So 600 plus parcel tax. Base, that's the base amount.
yeah.
And
Which is
parcel
over
tax
$1,000 by
did,
itself.
parcel tax did not increase.
Yeah, but I'm still looking at what I'm paying for water.
Yeah.
I'm paying, what's the parcel tax? 375?
390.
390 plus 6 times 112 plus your excess that you're budgeting at 150. I'm up to like $1,300, $1,400 a year for water
Yeah.
for my place.
You're counting the parcel tax.
Sorry?
You're counting the parcel
Yes.
tax. So was this number needed to cover costs?
Correct.
So
Well,
this number
this number is twofold. It's, I think, an overestimating of what actual your budgeted revenue was in the past, and then also to recognize increased costs in the new year. So it's a double whammy, unfortunately.
how come we're not in a major shortfall then this year?
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go.
I think when we
Why-
get to
why-
the year end, you're gonna be short.
What?
Doesn't happen, Jill.
Have we contributed to the capital reserve yet?
Well,
I think we're gonna be short on revenue, but our expenditures are gonna be way light of budget
Correct.
too, right? And so when we're talking about 2020 right now, are we talking about actual or budgeted expenditures?
We're talking actual to September, and then estimated October, November, December.
So
Yeah,
you've worked off actuals and
Correct.
added 3 months,
correct,
and that's where you get your numbers from.
correct.
Well,
So something is, you've done something here. Something's not adding up because our financial statements are, as of 9 months, are saying we're in the black. So what's going to change so much in the last 3 months that we won't be in the black?
Yeah, that we need $200,000 more.
where do you get that from? Ian?
So,
I don't have the financial statements we got in September, but when we were looking at our September financial statements.
He's got those numbers in there.
Yeah, so as I recall, we were short on revenue, but we were even more in the black on expenses.
Your expenses were less than what
So-
you.
Yeah, so say we were under by 100,000 on revenues,
If you go
we
to-
were under by 110,000 on expenses.
Is that to do with that?
It could be.
yeah, well, if you go back to the new first page,
New first,
Which is where we've been the whole time.
okay, I'm notes around looking at
Sorry,
it.
new first page.
Well, we got rid of the first page, right? So, as of September the 30th, total revenue was 624.
which column am I looking at?
So it's 2020 third quarter results. So the third one in.
I don't have that on-
I believe
on
that
the
would be the
first page.
second page.
Okay, it's a new first.
2020 third
It's
quarter
the new
results on
second.
the second
Oh, was that
page.
the second page? Okay.
Sorry, the new.
Okay, the new second page. So, yeah, sorry, the second page. Yeah, so you look at 2020 third quarter results.
Okay,
So revenue is 624.
got
Expenses are 804. And so there's I didn't do the math on that, sorry about that, but that's a deficit of 180.
Yeah, you haven't done the capital reserve contributions yet, have you?
And that's excluding any reserve transfers.
So that's not what I recall from the financial statements.
The numbers worked on.
Then I must have misread them before because I thought I'd read it and said we were fine. That's what's bothering me.
Okay, so quick math here, there's not $500,000 in property taxes added in there. That brings you up to 1.1. And then fully a quarter of expenses and capital contributions. I mean, it's 300 plus in capital contributions. That puts you at 1.1 million right there, and there's still another quarter to record, so there's still lots of expenses. There's still lots of revenue. I'm sorry, I'm not helping at all because the numbers are all over the place.
I can't believe we have to approve this budget today. I'm so uncomfortable with this.
I am too.
Wow.
Well,
Well, as long as you get it
So
signed off and to me,
no, let's back up. Do we have to approve this whole budget, or do we have to approve fire and street lighting?
he wants it with a budget, an approved budget.
Fire and street lighting, or everything?
I assumed everything because,
but that's a good point because it's the fire and street that tie into requisitions and the water does not. So maybe that's a question we could ask them.
If all we have to do is approve fire and street lighting, that's easy, and we can spend more time on this water issue, right?
Yeah, because if we approve this budget, does that mean that today our water tolls will go up because of it in next year?
Well, if we were to approve this entire budget with the rates that are being recommended, yeah.
We can't amend it afterwards, once we figure out what the hell's going on?
Well, if we're submitting a budget, now, what he really needs is a budget and a bylaw authorizing what? The property tax component, of it, correct?
Just reading the letter again.
Well, I agree with you, Ian, that I'm a little worried because the fire department budget is so large as well. And I'd like to have,
But it's simpler.
I agree that it's still large, and I would like to have, like, I've got some suggestions, and I'm wondering if you guys have suggestions. I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll tell you.
I'm back and saying, I'm seeing a 30% increase in rates, and
That's water.
that's crazy,
So that's why I'm trying to separate these two groups.
right?
So it's asked for a detailed budget to support the amount required for the year 2021 for each of fire protection and/or street lighting functions.
Okay. So that means we need fire, street lighting, and administration, right? So that we would allocate the administration to those two services. So we would have to be able to detail that component of it.
Sorry, are they already in there?
But then they are, but what I'm trying to do here is divide this budget, so we're only approving a portion of it.
Okay, but when I look at fire, is the already in there for?
Can we stop for a second? I don't want to talk about the details of each one, I want to talk about the process here for a second. Is that what we want to do? Like, can we separate water out of this? And then we can talk about fire and water and how we feel about those numbers. Sorry, fire and street lighting. And move towards approving that budget and then revisit the water component of this, because I'm confused when it comes to water.
I hope so. I don't know if you can, but I sure would like to.
It sounds like the ministry will accept that.
I do have a question.
Okay, but I just wanted us to sort of talk about that. Are you okay if we go down with that?
If you answer the question, I'm not sure if I can answer. If there are costs within fire that need to lower the overall cost of the functions, in other words, I'm looking at trying to figure out how to eliminate that. So I think the answer is no, nothing in fire would impact water in terms of our ability to meet the zero increase. Does that make sense?
The budget happens differently, does it not? If we budget for fire and street lighting independently of water, because they come from different pockets, right?
Yeah, so the details of those individual budgets are in the packages attached to the last few pages.
So we can lower tax load by figuring out how to lower fire, but that wouldn't change the water cost.
Okay, well here's you've got an administrative salary, yours. Part of it's charged to water, so to fire. You know, if you look at that, maybe that's not quite the right amount of money that should be in there. In fact, fire takes more time. Maybe the split is 60-40 instead of 50-50. All I'm saying is in ways of dicing it, that maybe puts a little bit more.
So now that would now impact the
So
bylaw.
you're still taking us down that rabbit hole of saying, let's talk about fire costs. Can we talk about, are we going to do this? Are we going to divide the budget so we're only doing fire and street lighting and administration and that? So I don't need to solve your question right yet, other than to say we should solve your question. But let's talk about how we're going to do this. Are we going to set water aside and say we need to revisit it? Because we don't need to set water bills by Wednesday. We need to set taxes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do that, because water is confusing the heck out of me. Right? There is errors or past errors, and then there's inconsistencies in the numbers, or at least in my head. I'm not understanding it because of things like John brought up, and what's missing from revenues in September and estimates going forward. So let's talk about fire and,
Are we all okay with that?
I'm okay. I think this is what we have to do. That's the only responsible thing to do right now, is just take the simpler elements of this
Yeah, right now I could not vote on this water budget.
I can.
Because I don't even, yeah.
I can.
So we're going to fire rescue service here?
So, Graham, I think you and Janice, you understand what we're trying to do here, just approve those two things. So lead us through, and then John has a question with respect to, do we have the right split of administrative allocation between the services?
So we looked at street lighting, we kind of just left it status quo, that was the 37 and 37.
Pretty simple start.
Last page.
Last page,
Very last page.
very last page.
The actual last page.
Now, where does the money come from this? From property taxes?
From the province.
Yeah. Yeah, from property tax.
That's what we're sending our line over.
And what was the actual expenditure so far? Have you,
So for street lighting, it's up to September 30th. Of course, we're not doing proper cutoff. It was 25,000, so we gross that up, it's around 34.
okay.
With the proceeds that being, just to take it out for the
Yeah.
community.
Make it 12 months or whatever,
Yeah.
right?
And you don't anticipate higher costs?
They're pretty consistent.
I don't think hydro didn't, we
It's hydro.
didn't enhance it another 8% this year,
Yeah.
so I think it's,
Will there be more streetlights going in?
Not 3 months.
Have you been approached by this diagram with LEDs?
I mean, in the next year's budget, will we be required to supply more streetlights? Or power more streetlights?
I doubt it, unless,
Well, they would have to tell us because the budget before the year, I mean, we couldn't, they can't just say, you have to put more street lighting in after we.
I'm just thinking about our proposals that are on the table. Will there be street lighting in any of our developments? by then?
ways off.
Yeah. Okay, so that one's probably good.
I'm good with it.
That's an easy one.
So fire,
Yay.
the fire, so it's the second to last. So, like I talked a bit of a spiel about, our GL's not really matching up to, you talked about allocating what should be the proper allocation between public works and fire. So the actual are probably understated because it doesn't really have any of the, some of the admin functions that have to get charged to it. So we kind of walked through and sort of allocated those sort of admin costs. We tried to make it 50-50, like legal, like that's kind of the overall legal costs there. Same thing with the advertising, audit. So we put the audit fee, we broke it 50% fire, 50% water, insurance. So we've tried to, most of those admin expenditures, we've tried to sort of allocate 50-50 kind of idea. And then on the wage side, you can see at the bottom, I didn't do this one. So the fire department actually, for the proper fire department is 100,000, and then there's a transfer over for a main cost of 71,350. So that's a 50-50 split of the men already. And so this is
I actually have a hard time with that, right? Because the administration work that we do is primarily water tools.
We do a lot of fire too.
Do you?
And it's always, as long as I've been there, it's historically been 50-50 on everything.
I understand that we've done that historically, but if you were to take a study of the work that you and Lindsay do, is it really 50-50?
No. 25.
So the way that it's set up right now, to sort of walk through, this is sort of the reserve transfer. So wherever the surplus is in this budget request gets transferred into the fire renewal reserve. So the way this is set up, there's 131,900 moved over to the fire renewal fund.
And I'm sorry, there's no revenue number in here. There's an expenditure number, and I can't read it. Is it 288?
Which page you
I
looking at?
think you need second to last page.
Yes. It's the 2020 third quarter results.
Yeah, so what I was talking about, the GL is pretty much charging everything at almost 100% to Public Works, and so we're just starting, so yeah.
Okay, so I'm one up from that. First, I'm dealing with big numbers. What was our revenue for that year? Are we on target?
Yes, because it's straight, it's government transfer. I'm just missing that number there.
There's no revenue other
They
than.
just ask for the money.
Yeah, so money to give it to you.
Okay, so what you're telling me is you did get the revenue, and I'm sorry, is it
459,
459?
yeah,
And
$30,
then
64 cents.
And you get some interest and donations.
okay, so maybe say it differently. Before capital transfers, what's the surplus?
Oh, no, we didn't.
The surplus, well, the budget surplus is 145.
That's the budget. What's the actual surplus, projected surplus?
Well, it would be substantially higher than that because again, the O's and in costs haven't been charged over there yet.
You're saying we're going to have a larger amount of money to put in the capital reserve funds because why?
I don't think you're saying that.
I'm sorry, that's what I thought.
No.
The numbers currently show it that way, but there will be an in-cost transferred over, I presume, so that
Yeah.
the numbers should be in the same range.
And what I'm interested in knowing is, okay, we make the capital cost budgeted transfer. If there's still a surplus left over, what happens to that surplus?
That goes to the fire department bill.
Who makes that decision? The board?
Well, surplus is going to reserve funds, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure it's legislated on what you request on your.
Okay. Well, I was very surprised that the board can't decide where to spend that money. There's your increase in
You
taxation.
can't put it anywhere but into the fire department.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we've increased the taxes for this department by $11,000. If we've got a surplus outside of the capital cost contribution of $11,000, let's reduce.
I don't understand the expression capital cost contribution. Meaning the amount that gets transferred into the reserves?
Say the capital reserve fund contribution is currently at 145.
Okay.
If we've got more money in surplus coming in than 145, what I'm saying is take part of that surplus and make the increase in taxation zero for next year. And whatever's left over, put in the capital reserve.
There is no increase in taxation.
Okay, well, I'm reading the annual budget for last year at 459.
Like, we're not talking about increasing parcel tax.
No, we're talking about.
No, he's saying that
Property
we're now
taxes.
requesting 470,000 instead of 459,000, so that's an increase.
So you'd want to reduce what we're asking for?
What John is saying is, in the event that, we budgeted for $145,000 to go into the capital reserve fund. In the event we had $160,000 of surplus, is it doable to transfer 145 as planned into the surplus fund and use the excess surplus to fund 2021 expenditures and not increase revenues?
I don't know what the rule is on that.
To me, that's a government question we have to ask, right? I don't know the answer to that question, nor do I think it's the right thing to do when we've got fire halls and fire trucks and those kinds of things coming up, that we wouldn't be being prudent with that. That would require a reserves study as well to say, okay, what does this look like over the next 10 years, to say what are the uses of those funds, right?
And I don't think we have time to do that, but I agree with you in principle that I'm for 0% increase in tax increases. And I'll say it, I'll make it a resolution. It's a little bit different. That we make this a tax reposition the same as we had in 2020, and anything left over goes to capital reserve.
I can't support that because I don't know.
So let me say why. Because I know that there's capital requirements, I get that. I have a problem with today's taxpayer paying for tomorrow's expenses. Today's taxpayer. You and I paying for this today, when in 5 years from now we'll build a fire hall, and those guys get the benefit of my tax dollars.
Okay,
Now,
so let's go on the water side of things, where the people in the past have paid for the reserve funds that will replace your water.
Absolutely. Yes.
So
I
you're speaking of both sides of your mouth.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is that there has to be some contribution. I'm saying that maybe it can be a little different.
So I don't know the rules, so I wouldn't even go.
I'm saying that attitude has put us in the situation we're in now with that water treatment plant, because Union Bay was not paying in advance for things, for infrastructure that was needed. That's why we're faced with an enormous bill now, so that is bad policy in my mind.
I would like to differ on that and say that there's a lot of people out there who pay a lot of taxes, and they see their water rates going up every year, and the past boards made a decision to charge a certain rate. That would be a combination of reserve and debt payments, and that was part of your plan. If it wasn't part of your plan, then your comment is...
Historically, Union Bay was paying such low rates that it wasn't even covering the cost of delivering water.
And I get that, and I think past boards have made that correction. What I'm saying is that maybe we've gone too much the other way. Your comment about what has to be put in there is absolutely right on. But we're not going to decide that now. In the interim, we'll say, I don't want to see any tax increases, period.
So let me just ask back here. So we've increased the budget by about 11,000 or 1,000. And what was the main increase? Just tell me what the increase was. What's going to cost us more this year than last year? Without
Well, the big, on the budget side of things, the big change is material and supplies. You can see the 2020 budget, we had $8,900 there.
materials and supplies.
Year to date, so this is at September 30th, there's 28,000 there, but I think 15,000 of that, or sorry, 38, but 15,000 of that's, no, what was it?
And I can tell you, what has happened is prior boards have not wanted to spend any money. So it becomes a problem. At one point, you have to replace things. And that is what's happened this year with the fire department. They have had to spend a lot of money on replacing their hoses, their uniforms.
And it wasn't budgeted for us. And that's why we're way over budget. So that's that whole 11,000 right there in that column.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and wages are up substantially.
Wages, where?
No, wages are...
That's administrative transfer. So that if you look at remuneration administration on the fire services page, fire rescue services page,
Okay.
it's gone up from 50 to 71, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's a 50% transfer that I did there.
But wages are up by, like, that's up 40%.
Sorry, where's wages?
It's remuneration.
The 71,350
Yeah.
was the transfer.
Right, but in 2020's budget, it's 50,000. Why is it up that much? When wages, when we look at the administrative component, aren't they pretty flat, like we were talking about at the beginning?
Well, because we transferred 71 over there, and I think maybe the prior year that was only 50.
Oh,
I'm not sure, like, again, I didn't compare, or...
wait a minute. How come it's 179,000 in actual third quarter results? 179,000 in wages?
So, it's a bit of a, the budget is broken out in more detail than the actual GL. So if you take the so...
You would have to take the 100,000.
Yeah, so I think the reason for that is that is that I'm allocating the severance pays to 50/50.
Yeah.
So that's why it's higher.
We had 2 severances going.
And you, of course, would not know that that was happening when you did the budget.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, why are we so low in the third quarter? We had such an enormous increase. You know, the total is 288,000 with over $120,000 more. Yeesh, I don't get it. Anyway. So basically, you're asking for $11,000 more from the province. Will that make our
It's not
property
going
taxes increase? you think?
I don't know how that,
It would, absolutely. it would.
yeah, I don't know how that side works.
Because how many properties are there? There is more than 690, right?
So we're not asking for 11,000 more, we're asking for 3,000.
No,
Last year, it was $504,030.
Really?
This year, we're asking for 507.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at this 470 to 459.
So we have to add in street lighting into this too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, okay. And that's the same. So really, we're going with just this for fire.
It's $13,000 more. Is it not? Or is that 467 or 457? 467. So it's $3,000 more.
to 470.
the map that was in here, I can't comment on, but they said there's 694 parcels, which I think is probably understated. And so it worked out to be a $4.26 increase.
Per parcel.
And parcel taxes are going to.
Right, no, in property tax.
It's property taxes.
So for the matter,
So, can I just add, sort of, to try and help frame things, really what your request for this is really dependent on how much you want to transfer into your reserves.
That's what I was just going to get at. Is this going to be enough? I mean, we are looking at building a new fire hall, a new fire truck. It's about, what, $500,000 or more? Yeah, so I
what's in the reserves now?
1.5?
So now,
1.5 for,
Certainly there's that idea of borrowing a firewall as well, right? So
and I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's under 1 point, yeah, it's under 1.5.
what, in the proposed budget, and I'm sorry to mention this, but I didn't hear the answer, there's no interest or,
yeah, I was going to ask that too.
so there's 8,000 from 2020.
which page are you looking
Yeah,
at?
so the way I didn't put that in the budget, and that's just because it's a council million, because what's earning the money is reserves. So that $8,000, this should increase your reserve to $8,000. So for an operating budget, it's a flow through, right? So it didn't increase revenue by 8,000, they increase the because it's invested in the reserve fund, so that interest needs to be allocated to the
Okay,
reserve fund.
and that's fine, but you still have to show it as revenue.
what he's saying is
Then you have.
I was just trying to make the budget simpler, just make it more of an operating budget as opposed to the full capital budget.
I bet it doesn't look simpler because it looks like we didn't get our $7,000 or our donations. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But don't you have to show it as a revenue, like legally? Sorry.
It's, to me, $8,000 or something like that, it's pretty material and insignificant. I'm just trying to make it easier for you.
And I'm going to comment on the donations. The donations do not come to Union Bay, they come to the Firefighters Association, so they should not be on our books. And prior administrators and admin assistants issued tax receipts. We are not a charitable organization, they are incorrect, they're not supposed to do that. So we do not get donations. The Firefighters Association does.
Do they need receipts?
so if you showed $8,000 of interest, would you then show $462,000 of property taxes?
Well, it's a transfer, no, not property taxes, but a transfer to, yeah.
So you would just show, well, what that would say is it would flow down to the 130, the 131 would become 139.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that. Because that's, we want to see that we're transferring in the same amount of money at least as we did last year, I would think.
Okay.
Like if there is interest to be earned on that, then it should be going back in, right?
Yeah, and then I would assume,
Well, wait a second, but really, we're not transferring in that money. It's accruing inside the thing. We're not doing it, we're not adding to it, it adds to itself.
So the 7,000 that's up on the line in
It's the interest.
In last year's,
budget.
Right, do we actually earn it outside of the reserve fund? So it shouldn't be.
That's relevant. What's the PSAC rule on it? PSAC rule is it's interest earned, it should be showing up in your financial statements.
Yep,
And it does.
yeah, so,
But it'd be in the reserve fund financial statement, not on the operating fund.
Not in the
No,
budget.
it should show up in the operating statement.
Not necessarily capital reserves.
Sorry, and transfer out as a capital reserve contribution.
Yeah.
Don't transfer it that way.
I think we're all just making stuff up.
No?
It happened to be a contribution.
30 years.
When, it's not a contribution if it's a bank account that accrues interest.
Look, it's a matter of being
It's-
transparent in
yeah.
finances. It shows as income coming in and income going out. That's the way it should be shown.
yeah.
I will leave this to our accountants to show.
The place, you get to the same place, it's just a
It's the
matter
same
of
place,
transparency.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm sorry,
I'm less worried about that right now, I'm more worried about what do we want to transfer into the reserve funds, right? Like, we're estimating 145 in 2020, and we're estimating 132.
So I just put the 7,000 in there, so it bumps it up, so it could be, right?
Okay, so we're in the same ballpark, is everybody happy with that? Or that's a $4 property tax increase?
well, I have to ask you the question before you get there. You've got a projection here, and I'm sorry, is it 385 for the year?
What, like,
Total expenditures?
Yeah,
It's 388.
388, okay. And
Sorry, yeah, no, it's 385, yeah, sorry.
the budget for the year is,
So it's deficit in the current year, the way it is right now, right?
well, and that's what I'm getting at, like,
Once you, because that's no transfer, right? And so a lot of this is how do the wages get allocated, right? Because the budget is less because substantial severance pays in the current year. That's why the budget's out. The wages are way, and that's a one-time thing. So that's just how-
okay, sorry. The way I'm reading it is, we're projecting a 388 expenditure
Yep,
before capital transfer.
yep.
You've got, and I'm sorry, a 288 budget.
For expenditures,
Yeah.
annual budget was
That's
321.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're the wrong column.
Yeah, and the 288 was September through today.
So we've got a $65,000 difference. Where does that money come from? Where does it go? Does it get carried forward as a deficit?
Well, you probably reduce your transfer to capital funds, right?
I'm sorry, reduce it?
Yeah.
I'm
So it's
completely lost in what we're talking about.
Me too.
I'm just looking
Let's
at...
get focused here.
Okay, well, you know what? Some of us are focused. I'm focused on the actual, right here, it says 388 versus the budget of 321. That means we've got a $65,000 shortfall in the current year budget. I'm asking, where is that coming from?
I don't see
It's
it.
a simple question.
You're saying, John, in the third quarter results, we're at 288? Is that what you're saying? And
Go to
then
the column over. The column over is projected to year end,
the
right?
2020 annual budget column?
I see revenues of 467,
Yeah.
and I see expenditures of 321. And I see an excess of 145, and those numbers seem to add up to me.
Go to the other two columns. There's a 2020 year-end projection. Go to the bottom. It says the projected expenditures, and I'm sorry.
I have no idea what column we're looking
Okay,
at.
second from the right.
2020 year-end projection.
There's no revenues in there.
Yeah, I missed the revenue part piece, I think I just
Well,
put
I'm
it
working on
in.
expenditures, the revenues or something else. It says it's 388 expenditures. That's the projection they've given us for the year-end.
What's the difference between the year-end column and the 2020 annual budget? Is that, so are we looking at the year-end expenditure column, or are we looking at the budget?
Okay, 2020 year-end projection is the projection they've made for expenditures for the year-end. That's what you said we're going to end up with expenditures.
385.
Sorry, yes, am I right?
Yep, so yeah, I'll just walk you through. So I've updated this, so I put down 7,000 for interest, who knows, that's probably going to be close to what we get. So waiving set, the projected surplus is just under, just under $74,000.
What is 74,000? What?
The surplus, projected surplus before any capital reserve transfers.
Okay.
So we're gonna-
Sorry, I now get your time, but it was not clear in terms of.
Yeah, so that's what the projected,
I get it. I mean,
and those are projections, it was a very simple
that's
projection.
fine, I'm okay with that, that's what we're working with. But the point I'm getting at is, you've got $74,000 as a projected surplus, but you've got a $145,000 budgeted transfer.
Yep,
So you're not gonna, unless you book in, if you book in the 145, that means you're gonna start this year with a $75,000 deficit.
But we're not gonna
get it.
we're not gonna look, we're gonna look at the surplus, right? We're gonna look at the 75 or whatever it is.
So there is room to change the amount going forward on the capital.
Well, it's a budget, right? It says this is what we think the surplus is gonna be. Oh, it's not that big, it's smaller, that's what we transfer in.
I'm okay with that, perfect, I love that, that's great. But that's not what I got earlier, I got that we have to book this in because we need the money for expenditures, which we do, but I think we need some flexibility.
Well, we don't need to book it in, it's just, like, we want to book in an appropriate amount to continue to have healthy funds.
Right.
Okay, and that's where I'm at too, perfect, we're all on the same page.
Okay, so if we're booking in 75 this year and planning to book in 138 next year, are we happy with that? Or do we still want to book in more, given that we've got expenditures coming?
I want zero taxes.
I don't think that's practical.
I don't think that's
Well,
realistic.
before you go any further, you booked into $7,000, right?
yep.
What does that mean in terms of taxes?
That-
As you said, it's a transaction, it flows back into the reserve fund, because it's interest on reserve
I
funds.
get that, but if the reserve contributions stay the same, it means that the amount we need for taxes should drop.
Okay, so I think we're now just debating as to what the right
I'm
number
not
is.
sure you understood what I just said.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it's not for me to,
No, it's not. What you're saying is I'm arguing for zero taxes, and that means I'm arguing for lower reserves.
Well, you just have to set the $5,000 out of it in a couple of statements.
I just said the truth of what you're saying is you're arguing for zero taxes and lower reserves than this proposal shows.
Okay, so may I just get back to the number?
Sorry, I'm trying to converge us.
I'm getting there too. What we're talking about is basically $4,000 to bring it to zero.
when you say zero, what do you mean by zero?
I mean,
Like zero, if we put the exact same revenue as last year? Exact same revenue as last year, so that would bring the reserve transfer, budgeted reserve transfer of 120, just under 128, so 127,930.
okay, and that's what the $7,000 is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting at. It means 128. Still got lots, but as a board, we can say zero taxes. I like that.
But see, I'm not grandstanding on that number. I'm kind of going, what's the
I'm not going to
appropriate?
say either. I'm talking about what people can afford.
$4, right? Like, so, and I don't mean to be flippant about that, right? But you're making an assumption too that people can't afford $4, right? I'm trying to say, what is the right governance for us to do to protect the future of union-based services, right? And so, whether we keep the number flat or it goes up by $4
Yep.
is not important to me. What's important is doing the right thing.
I'm wholly on board with you. You can't make that decision right now because you don't have the information.
We have most of this information.
You don't know what the long-term capital needs of the fire department are. I have not seen anything that tells me what the capital needs are, when the money will be expended, and how it's going to be funded. Until I have that, I can't tell you if that's the right amount.
We know a fire hall is coming, we know a fire truck is coming.
That's a little bit.
We absolutely know that we need a new fire hall. The new fire trucks can't even fit inside
This
those
is
fire
not a by
halls.
guess and by golly
It's
situation.
not, it's well known and has been known.
Okay, so I think we're down to expressing opinions. And I think we're down to the point
I don't like it
where
when you.
I want us, that we can vote on that part, right? But I think we want to bring it down to a proposal, but we have to make sure we process this entire budget. And so we've done street lighting, we've done fire, we've noted that you say I want 0 tax increases. We yet haven't talked about the admin transfers to make sure we fully understand that portion of this, right? And what I think I hear you saying is it's 50-50, but I'm not sure I see that in the numbers, and I'd like to explore it. Right, like I see in the fire side of things that we've got an admin transfer budgeted of $71,000. I think when I go over to Public Works, I see an admin transfer, I think, gotta find it on my finger here,
Hopefully it's the same number.
142,700.
No, the main transfer's down below.
Yeah, just reducing by 71,350.
Sorry, point me to where that number is.
It's about 3 lines down, 4 lines down.
Remuneration administration.
Then I got one that says fire department admin wages to fire services, like as a
Negative 71,350.
So you deducted the 71 from the 142, you mean?
Yeah.
50/50. Third page from the back.
Okay, I got it now,
So
I got it.
why did you
It's
do
always
that?
been 50/50.
Well, no, but why, for clarification, wouldn't you just put one column and put 71 whatever for the, or column and 71 for?
Well, because the 142,700 is an actual number, so it's just,
And you wanted to compare it to the budget of 2020.
yeah, so it was kind
It's
of,
a consolidated number.
yeah. Because really, 90% of the accounts are consolidated, so it's kind
That's
of,
why I could never be an accountant. Anyway.
Yes, there are.
All right.
So who's that?
The 50/50.
That's the amount.
Everyone's wages are still 50/50 in admin.
It is, so it's 3 that. Okay,
so it's a 1.8.
And so that then begs us to look at administrative costs and to say, is there any savings available to us, or are we in the right place with respect to admin costs, and therefore what's transferred over? And so the bulk of admin department.
Where is the, are the
So
costs?
there's no wages in the admin side of things here.
And where are the costs for all of these consultants that are all
They're in here.
being used? Where are they? What are they called?
So some are probably in public works and some are in the admin.
Okay.
They're under subcontractor and or professional fees.
Professional fees.
Is there anything here?
Correct, it was very good.
19,000 for public works. And
Oh, really?
3,000 for fire.
1,000 for me and 2,000.
Okay.
So we have budgeted for
What's communications?
$35,000 subcontractors and professional fees next year.
In a minute.
No, overall.
Oh, okay.
Overall.
Must be mostly water then.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
You were saying that the contractor amounts for $34,000, and I was just saying it's not much in fire, so it's probably mostly water.
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe it did.
It's heavily admin and water.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I'm sorry, but I didn't see this on the agenda, and I was.
That's 'cause we just did it. We didn't have the deadline until yesterday.
Even if I had looked at this hours, I would have just had a zillion of questions.
And then you were going to process.
I'm pretty much feeling like that now.
And I'll tell you, ultimately, what we wanted to do would be a Zoom meeting, and Graham can share his screen. That would be kinder than us trying to read this in microprint, but there hasn't been a lot of interest in Zoom amongst the board.
I didn't ask, but whatever.
So we have
No, this
expenditures.
should have been a meeting all by itself.
Absolutely.
This should have been a meeting all by itself, with lunch provided.
There you go.
Well, so we have costs other than wages of $25,000. That's pretty low. And so then the wages on top of that, it's all split 50-50. Or I guess, are these admin expenditures split anyway?
what's showing up as min gets brought into public works, 100% into water.
I'm sorry, which budget you were in?
I'm just looking at the admin sheet, which is sheet number 4 from the back,
Okay, so
third from the front.
you moved on?
Well, I'm just trying to process all of the information, the admin costs.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay, I changed.
Oh, okay.
So it's, and you say all of the admin costs, so remuneration is split 50/50, and
So, yeah, so within the admin tab, okay, so goes back to, I was just trying to make this less cumbersome as possible, because this is what the budget has done for the last few years, so I just took it as a template and had these things around, but I think it makes it confusing. You got some in command, you got some in public works. You know, to me, it should just be one admin, and of that admin, some gets allocated to water, some gets allocated to fire. But that's not how it's not set up that way, and I just didn't want to go through that process.
agreed.
That may be something, you know, after amalgamation decision made, maybe you re-examine how you do your whole budgeting process, tie it into, you know, your capital improvement plan and all that sort of stuff, because that's really the long-term success for Green Bay. That's what we need to figure out. What do we need for these reserves to do what we need to do to make this continue to operate?
And I'm sorry, we've already discussed this, but in comparing the 2020 projection to the budget, why are we out $60,000? I know I recognize the $60 problem, but why are we out $60,000?
What page are you on?
The fire department budget.
That's the second from back.
Yes.
So
And
why
when
are
you
we
say out by 60, you're talking about which two columns?
I'm talking about the 2020 year projection versus the 2020 kind of budget. So the difference, basically 388 to 321 budget.
330 is the,
35 is in wages, and then in material and supplies is hugely over budget too.
35 is in wages. Whose wages?
Was that the severance package we're talking?
severance is part of it.
There was a severance, yeah. There were two.
But we don't want to talk in too much detail around that in public.
Okay, so
But the big one is material and supplies. You can see the budget was 8,900. At September, we spent 38,000. So if you just prorate that, that's $51,000 there. So that's your driver.
okay, so I'll say it's a little different. A non-recurring expenditure costs most of the difference.
A pent up
A non-recurring.
I wouldn't call it non-recurring.
See, I wouldn't either. I would call it
There was a catch-up,
a
but,
catch-up.
but there should be an amount, a portion of that spent every year. So I think a portion of it is a catch-up, but we should budget for some of that on an ongoing basis. So don't wait 10 years to buy your fire hoses kind of stuff.
Right, so I'll say it's slightly different than the 322 of actual. In making a budget of 332, or is it 338 is okay, like on a high level, that's fine,
Yeah.
right? That's what you're telling us.
Yeah,
That's
because
sufficient.
the plan is to not underfund repairs and maintenance, to spend a bit every year replacing things that need to be replaced.
Okay, I'm going to say it slightly different again. We're over by $60,000 this year. What makes you think we're not going to be overexpended at $60,000?
Because we don't have to replace hoses next year, we don't have to
So there's
replace.
stuff, okay, one time, okay.
So you budgeted extra for maintenance, but I guess what John's saying is, geez, this year, or next year's budget is well under what we're going to spend this year.
We don't have to do as much catch-up.
Ian, can I
Has
ask
Chief
you a question?
Ham looked at this at all?
Pardon?
Has Chief Ham seen any of this? Has he given you input into it?
Well, we have talked about over the year, the money that they've had to spend to catch up.
Has he been asked about what might need to be replaced or?
We've talked about it. fairly regularly this year. You know, and he feels that they are getting caught up.
Okay.
You know, he's happy.
As a general practice, have you also done the same thing with Janet?
Well, there's not, it's a whole different story because with the water treatment plant, there's not a lot of catch-up obviously because it's brand new. The distribution side, it is what it is,
Okay.
yeah.
Can I ask you, does being out by $60,000 surprise you, or was the board apprised of it?
I'm not sure of the question.
Well, we're out by $60,000 at the end of the year. Our budget, we're overspent our budget by $60,000. Was the board apprised of that throughout the year, that we're going to be over?
We have recently started seeing financial statements back at this meeting.
Okay, okay, that's my reason.
Okay. So, I think the issue we need to decide here is, are we comfortable with the level of funding for fire and street lighting? So the last point of discussion is that we're actually budgeting to spend less in 2021 than we did in 2020 for fire services. And that does feel a little
Especially
risky.
since we're shortfalling on our capital reserve contribution. I don't think it's great, even though that means increase. My opinion.
The other thing that I'm wondering about is we are budgeting for administration at a 60% administrator. And while that may be the right place to start, I don't want to create other pinch points on top of that. Like I'd rather have some degree of flexibility in case that needed to become 40 or something like that. So, clamping this thing down when we're already clamping this thing down might be a little bit too much, if that made sense. That's my opinion on this. I'm not inclined to try to hold taxes flat. My personal opinion, what I'm struggling with is whether this is enough, or whether we need to actually think about reserve funds a little bit more strongly, given that we had such a shortfall this year, and that we have a lot of expenditures coming. But I hear Trustee Francis' thing that says we don't have a detailed capital plan in front of us to justify that either.